Welcome to the Mix Minus podcast. This is Matt McQueenie, and here we are another year, another college football season with my good friend Matt O'Daniels, who is now actually in the sports industry, right, Matt?
Yes, sir. I'm working at NBC News Channel in the sports department. I've been there for about a month now. So,
how's that been? What's your remit? What are you doing?
I'm video editing and writing scripts for highlights for basically the affiliates of NBC, basically the national. For example, I had Rockies Royals last night, so I did the highlight package and I wrote the script and I put it on the server. And if an NBC affiliate or whoever wants it from us, they want that game. They'll go to that game and that'll be done by me. But I'm not the only person that does it. There's probably a staff of about 15 to 25 people in our department. So we're constantly busy, always doing something. It's like a 24-hour news network. So it's a lot of fun.
Have you had one of your scripts read yet? Have you heard it on the air?
That's something that I don't know. That's something that I would have to go look up and try to investigate myself. But no, I don't know, but I'm sure it has. But it's one of those things where we're just constantly staying busy and churning out scripts and highlights that, it probably has. But it's so far so good. It's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Well, now we will shift, as we do each year, to the college football season. And it is in this weekend that we get going, only 2 days away from now, August 26th. And what we're going to do is we're going to discuss this weekend and then right into the next week, which is games on Thursday and then games on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. It's really the time of the schedule where college football has the entire docket to itself. It almost has a little bit of a bowl feel, doesn't it?
Well, it's similar to the last few years, and I kind of like that because it forces big-time programs to face each other, whereas I know some of these games are scheduled a few years out in advance, but it does make it, the opening game, not just a pushover. It puts a premium on the non-conference games for those programs that are willing to play, across the country at a big time. Like last year, USC, Alabama, those two programs were willing to play each other. And it was a premier opening week of college football, or opening game of your college football season, which I think it can only help your program if you're looking to go further in the college football playoff.
Yeah, and I think you hit on that, and we'll hit on it because it's next week's game, but you can't get a better start than Alabama, Florida State. That is literally, if you're looking at the preseason rankings, and who knows how those net out over the season, but you're looking at that, and that is potentially, the college football playoff in many ways that we get to see early on now.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to jump ahead of you there, but it's just I think it's great for the game. Obviously, with the new format, with the playoff, you can still make it to the end of the year with a loss to a top team or an early season loss for that matter. But I just think it's going to be a wonderful slate of games, and I'm looking forward to this season. I'm very excited.
All right, well, here's what we'll do. We'll just kind of go through the games here. I don't know if you have the schedule in front of you. I have it on ESPN.com, so I'm just going to go right through the schedule there. Saturday. Go ahead. Before we start, after a long summer, other than the Alabama-Florida State game, was there anything that came college football-wise to you that you were like, oh, I'd like to see that game? I absolutely want to watch everything that Sam Darnold does from your USC Trojans. I want to see what Rutgers does locally. They have to play Washington again, but at least Washington is coming to High Point Solutions. I always like seeing Ohio State. I'm really interested in seeing Penn State this year. Obviously, Clemson's always fun. A lot of the ranked stories. You want to see how these teams come out, usually playing a lesser than opponent to a degree, other than the aforementioned Alabama, Florida State. But I'm just excited to see a lot of college football with nobody else competing against them. Yeah,
I just think it's funny, and maybe I'm in the I don't know I haven't heard a lot of Lamar Jackson talk over this offseason. Is he still not the best quarterback? I don't know. It's like he kind of got lost in the I just haven't heard too much about him this year, and I think that he's the Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, and I still think he's probably the best threat at quarterback, and he's still playing. But yet, I really haven't heard too much news from him or Louisville for that matter. But I'm excited to see him play.
Yeah, I think I'm always excited to see Lamar Jackson. We had our episode last year where we just were like head over heels in love with the guy, and he did nothing to disabuse us of that notion. They did have some tough losses throughout the year, where they were sort of on track to potentially vie for a college football playoff until they had some of those tough losses because they destroyed Florida State, if I remember correctly. And I just think the difficulty is they're so good at Lamar Jackson's position, and the rest of the team is not as good as that. It's almost sort of like Michael Vick with Virginia Tech in a way. Lamar Jackson is so good. The other thing, there's two things with Lamar Jackson I'm thinking. One, do we fall into that deal where the guy is playing this year when he would have left the college ranks if the rules didn't keep him here? Sort of like, do we fall prey to what we saw with the running backs last year with McCaffrey and Fournette, where they were there another year and they were kind of there just maintaining and holding their place, but they didn't want to get hurt, and they were really only there because of the rules. And so that's my only worry with Lamar Jackson. And on top of that, him potentially not being the highest pro prospect in many regards, that teams might be a little nervous about drafting him in a first round because they're not quite sure what to do with him. You kind of want more of a pocket passer, or you want someone who's going to pass first and then run off of that, because you tend to see a lot of those guys get hurt. So I'm wondering if some of the buzz drops off because of those two facts. What do you think of that?
Well, I think now defenses have the book on him, but he's just that dynamic that maybe his physical abilities still trump what the defense has figured out. And I don't know. I'm just excited to see how he reacts to an off season where, he's the Heisman Trophy winner. He gets a lot of credit, and I'm just wondering how he will top his performance from last year. And it should be very exciting.
Well, and don't you think that the buzz will all come back, but he has to kind of lead this team, maybe unfairly, but he kind of has to lead them towards that path where halfway through the season you're looking at it saying, okay, maybe they're in contention, because ultimately the only way this guy can top what he's done is to take them to the playoffs. And I don't know that the team around him is good enough to do that, because if we just see him in another bowl, even if it's a big named bowl, a former BCS type bowl, or around the New Year's Day bowls and all that stuff, they could be big. But you almost got to see him in that venue for him to top what we saw last year. I think we saw something that was just meteoric last year, and then winning the Heisman to follow that up and finish it off. But in most cases, I think he would have wished he could have gone pro. So I think the only way he can top it is really with team success this year. And really their team success is predicated on his individual success. So he's got a lot of work to top himself. It's kind of a difficult position for him.
Yeah, I mean, Deshaun Watson pretty much did, he one-upped himself. Well, he made an improvement from his junior year to his senior year, taking Clemson and winning this past year over Alabama. But I agree. It's something like there's no way Lamar Jackson, he has nowhere to go but down, basically, or kind of. I don't know. He has to go to the Final Four, because it's just it's a good problem to have if you're Louisville. But I just thought that I didn't hear so much off-season talk about Lamar Jackson that, what happened to this guy? I mean, he still is legitimate. He still is the Heisman Trophy winner. Maybe I wasn't listening to the right things or following up correctly. But it was just an interesting point, I thought.
Absolutely. Well, let's go through these games. I don't necessarily have something to say about a lot of them. I don't have the depth of knowledge on some of these teams as you might. I like a lot of the top stories, so we'll go through them. If you have a thought on them, just go ahead. If not, we'll move on to it, and I'll drop in where I have thoughts if I do. So our first game on Saturday, it's going to be so nice to get back to watching football, and it's the only place where you might watch Oregon State versus Colorado State because it's number one. It's 2:30 p.m. Eastern Time, CBS Sports Network out in Fort Collins. Do we have anything to say about that matchup?
I mean, it's going to be Mike Bobo's second year over in second or third year at Colorado State, and the once Georgia pass happy quarterback has kind of taken over McElwain's team and installed that. I guess football in general has gone to that RPO 5 wide. We're gonna think and dunk kind of West Coast style that offense, but similar to Kingsbury, Colorado State has this threat of an offense that is dynamic, and I don't know, they're playing home, so that's always good, especially if it's the first game of the year and you're playing a Pac-12, a higher conference team in an Oregon State. I don't know. I really don't. I think it's Oregon State. You gotta go in there and win. I mean, you shouldn't lose that game to Colorado State, but Colorado State's offense should be prolific this year.
So, just an aside question: did I read it right that the Big 12 has a championship game now?
Yeah, it took them long enough.
So that's a big deal for you, right? I know this isn't Big 12, but I thought of that question.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about time. I don't want to beat the dead horse, but they should have. It just made no sense to take one out when you had one before, and then now you don't have 12 teams in your conference. So what's the extra game going to? You know what I mean? So it really, to have it back is a no-brainer, and I don't even know why. Well, I'm not going to comment on that, but to see the conference championship game back for the Big 12 is something that is. I mean, they should have never taken it away from the get-go, but it's about time they brought it back.
Our next one is Portland State BYU. Anything?
Not really. I mean, BYU should take care of the Vikings. No problem. I don't see anybody out of the Big Sky this year making a threat unless there's another. I don't see BYU losing to Portland State, basically.
And then the next up, I'd be interested in this game if it were played in Hawaii, but it's being played in Amherst. We have Hawaii visiting UMass.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's for the frequent flyer miles. I don't know. Those schedule makers, that's a geographical nightmare, or a flight, a long flight if you have to take that. But I think that's a home and home. Hawaii should win, but watch UMass beat them by 50.
And then the next up, we got South Florida, number 19 here, going to San Jose State. And we have Charlie Strong leaving Texas to go to South Florida. And South Florida has a pretty good quarterback named Quentin Flowers, right?
Very good. And I've talked to 2 South Florida alums, my buddy Dennis, who is a good friend of mine, who's telling me about him in February. He's like, Matt, this guy's going to be, his freshman year, he's not as polished. He's going to be so much more better this year. He's going to be polished. Watch out for him. And then Matt Grothe, the former South Florida quarterback, I'm friends with him on Facebook, and we'll go back and forth in exchanges. And he is very high on the Bulls this year and looks forward to the season, as I just saw from one of his recent posts. Number 19, you have Matt, right? And the Bulls are charged for one of those non-conference or non-big conference, non-big 5 conference runs, a la Boise State.
Are we looking? I don't see. Do we have Texas playing over this next schedule that we're looking at?
No,
I don't see them. No. So, how interesting is that? Did Charlie Strong go to the higher ranked team after he took the big program down a notch?
Yeah, but I think Lane might have the best up and coming program down in Florida. I'm just kidding. But no, it is interesting. It is interesting to have Strong go leave. I think what it was for Texas was that they wanted to get a new regime in there, the AD. They just wanted a regime change, basically. They got the guy they wanted. They got rid of Charlie Strong. So, yeah, it was a good move, I guess. It was lucky for Strong to have fallen into that job. But Texas, I think, is looking more long-term, like more they want to, build a national title contending team for the next 10 to 20 years. And then you have, obviously they're competing with Oklahoma and they made their change. So I think Texas is always going to look long term, and I think the Charlie Strong decision, I don't think there was much foresight. I think they just wanted him to come in and change it really quick, and I didn't think they liked what Charlie was doing down in Austin, so they got rid of him. And I think they got the guy that they want, and I don't know. I think Texas is going to be pretty damn good, but I just don't know if Herman. It remains to be seen. Obviously, Herman's a kind of a. I don't know. I think he's a nice guy by all accounts, but then you read some things that he's getting on guys for social media, and then we're not going to talk to certain coaches and players, and then it was like, come on, guy, it's summer workouts. I know everyone wants to keep their program tight and close knit, but it also is 2017, and everybody's got access to information. So you're going to need to be a little bit more flexible with allowing your coaches and players to talk to the press.
Well, look at how well Clemson's done with that, with their whole social media organization, and it's just different ways of going. But I think what we're looking, or what Texas is hoping, is for the Urban Meyer acolyte to sort of do to Texas what Urban Meyer did for Urban, it was coming back to Ohio State, but sort of level playing field programs that might have been down a bit, and then you have this big savior coming in to build a program over years and to really change fortunes, both in the immediate, but ultimately 2, 3, 4 years down the road when you can start bringing in your recruited players into the program.
And it's so weird because I've gone to Clemson games the last 2 years, and I'll be going to one this year, November 11th against Florida State. And my buddy, who's a Clemson guy, was telling me about. He's like, Matt, do you understand how much Texas Longhorn football is how important it is? And I said, yeah. But he was basically telling me that if Clemson football is big, Texas football is that much bigger. So I think the people in charge of Texas are really struggling as to why their team isn't, top 10 year in, year out. You know what I mean? And they're still, they did play Alabama in 2010 when McCoy got injured, but I think their expectations are a little bit higher than even a Clemson. But you would know it by the past few seasons.
So now we are at Stanford going to Rice. Now Stanford, not going to Rice, they're going to Allianz Stadium in Sydney, which I still don't get this whole Australia connection, but there's sort of not that much sexiness to Stanford once Christian McCaffrey's gone, right?
Yeah, I think he was their superstar, unless they have a superstar in the making that we don't know about, which, I wouldn't be surprised if they do. Stanford just seems to get those guys who are a little bit underrated, fall under the radar, or the guys that, they won't necessarily play as much if they go to a high-profile program, but they'll be able to play at Stanford. I don't know. There's a lot of variables at Stanford. Obviously, you have to be, a good student to get in there for the most part. And I don't know. Stanford always just, for me, they just seem to surprise you, like, in a good way. So if you're a Stanford fan, I wouldn't be too worried as like who the next star is going to be, because they always seem to have one. Whether it's a McCaffrey like guy or
Richard Sherman. Didn't Richard Sherman go there too?
Yeah, Richard Sherman.
And Doug Baldwin, was he there too?
Yeah, they just have a way of or Gerhardt. I mean, there's a lot of players that just seem to, I think if you do good at Stanford, you can make a name for yourself, and so it doesn't really matter if you're highly recruited. I think if you go to Stanford, you'll get an opportunity.
Well, you know what it is? It's sort of the Notre Dame conundrum. But Stanford, you only can really get, sure, you can get top recruits, but you only maybe can pick 3 out of 10 of them based on the criteria that you have to have in order to get into that school. Stanford seems to continually get that 2 or 3 out of 10 to their school when they need to. I don't know if Notre Dame does all the time, but that's another story.
That's a great question. I mean, maybe Notre Dame gets more, but I don't know. I don't know why they don't produce. It's a great question.
So now we're on to Thursday, next Thursday, August 31st, the last day of August. The only thing that gets you from August into September without feeling sad is that you got all this football, college football to kind of get you drunk and hide it. So here's my thing. So the first game I see in this list that I would want to talk about is the Oklahoma State-Tulsa game. Is there any other matchups leading up to that one that you see in there that you want to note that's interesting because there's a coach there, a big player, an interesting wrinkle with the schedule?
I'm interested to hear why you're interested about Oklahoma State.
So I'm literally only interested in them because ESPN has them at number 10 here, but Sports Illustrated had them at number 4 and had them in the college football playoff. They have a quarterback who the NFL is going to look at, which I really do like to. I'm always looking towards that, Mason Rudolph, and they got some players. Yeah. So that's where my interest comes because I see them ranked and I see Sports Illustrated putting them in the conversation for the college football playoff. I think the Big 12 tends to underwhelm you when you start talking about the playoffs. But Oklahoma is the one who usually does it, and now we got Oklahoma State in play. Do we believe this?
I do. I think Mason Rudolph is that kind of talent, and you have Washington coming out from the backfield, who's an all-purpose back. Here's my deal. I wonder if Oklahoma State embrace, because I've heard, like you said, Sports Illustrated, a number of different outlets have picked Oklahoma State, and this is going back to like March and April, picked Oklahoma State to be into the college football playoff. And I get it, but I wonder if they're not tough enough, but they almost score too fast. And I just don't know if they play a team that isn't like that. And I find that between the Big 12 and the Pac-12, they play that similar style of high-paced offense where it's like score, 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 and it's very, very fast. But what happens if Oklahoma State plays a team like Washington almost gave Alabama a scare last year? Not to say that Washington is some profound offensive team, but I think they were a different style that Alabama wasn't used to. And so that's my only question is when Oklahoma State plays a team that isn't pass happy and into the quick run offense, how are they going to handle it? And how are they going to handle all this media and all this attention that they're getting? I mean, they haven't even played a game yet, and they're getting all this hype. So I wonder how Gundy handles that. It's a lot on the play. I mean, it's a good problem to have if you're a Cowboy fan, but I don't know. I still think they have to handle the Big 12 first before they start worrying about the playoffs.
Sure, and the Big 12 tends to eat itself. There's always upsets from the team who's leading the pack, and whether that's in conference or out of conference. But I will be interested to see coming out of the gates, nice 7:30 p.m. on a Thursday night. Makes sense to watch it, even though it's not on an ESPN channel here, so we might not be able to watch it, but I'm sure that it'll be available somewhere. So there was nothing else before that. I just can't see a lot of storylines in here. Where is Lane again? Is it Atlantic or is it International?
Yeah, FAU. The okay. Owls. Yeah, the Owls.
So I'm not
just an incredible story.
Yeah, it is crazy. So then the next up, I would see Utah is not ranked here. They're usually a pretty good team, but it's usually defense based. But
they do. But listen to this: they did finally pick their quarterback, sophomore. There was 3 guys running for the quarterback or in the quarterback race at Utah, and they had 8 players go to the NFL get drafted last year. That's crazy. And did you also know that I just heard this the other day that Utah in the past 8 years has had 7 different offensive coordinators. So I mean that's just kind of weird because you don't think Kyle Whittingham, he's been there for a while, but yet they've gone through offensive coordinators like crazy. However, they selected Tyler Huntley as their quarterback, and he was going to be the Ute starter over seniors Troy Williams and the Alabama transfer Cooper Bateman. We'll see what happens. I guess they figure since they lost all that pro talent, they're going to try to groom this sophomore quarterback and see what they do. But yeah, Utah is strange. They're not getting a lot of press because they did graduate a lot of the talent to the NFL, but I don't know. They're just always scary, especially if they play them on the road. Just like you just never know. You have to always prepare for them.
They're kind of really well coached. It's kind of got a Stanford feel to it. Not the same academics, but sort of the same defense first. A lot of discipline. Good coach who's there a long time who wants to kind of stay there. That's interesting about the offensive coordinators, though. So maybe that belies some issue.
And also, I think there's something to be said about some of these programs where, Utah football or BYU, that's the only game in town. There's no pro football. So I think there's something to be said about if you're the only game in town and you happen to be the college football team, people seem to care. So I think you can't really chart that or anything or equate that to anything. But I think there's something to be said about, Salt Lake City, they have Utah football. So everyone kind of cares about it. And if they're doing good, everyone's going to be happy. It's something that you can't, like I said, you can't chart it, but it's just interesting.
The next game up is number 2, Ohio State, who is number 2 here and number 3 in Sports Illustrated. Either way, they would be in the playoff again. Going to Indiana, who I always like offensively. Did they fire their coach? I forget.
You know what? That's a great question. Off the top of my head, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't remember. They always, I always liked them for the last couple of years. Anyone who hears these podcasts, but I couldn't remember if the head football coach was Tom Allen. That's not the same guy, right?
Double check.
Football coaches. I remember it was a guy who was from. All right, here we go. So we got. Kevin Wilson was the coach. Yeah. So now it's Tom Allen. Because it always seemed like he could have his team in games, and they just always kind of lost to the bigger teams. Yeah, so that'll be interesting. But real fun to watch Ohio State. Doesn't it feel like JT Barrett's been there 10 years?
I mean, what a good problem to have if you're Ohio State. I think Ohio State's going to be really pissed off this year. I think Ohio State is going to do whatever they can. I wouldn't want to play Ohio State this year in the regular season at all. It's just that simple. I mean, especially getting the snub last year, and kind of, I just think Ohio State is a force to be reckoned with this year. And, I mean, mercy on the Indiana Hoosiers. I mean, it's going to be scary.
Yeah, not fun. Let's see. I don't see a lot of other ones in the rest of that day. I see Arkansas there unranked. Memphis, I don't see much there. On Friday, we have, Syracuse is there. They're unranked. See, I'm always worrisome to talk about the unranked teams until they get ranked and they can show you something. I know Syracuse has tried to do this whole air raid offense, right? I don't know to what effect.
And so why do you like Syracuse? Because they're New York's college team, or what's their slogan?
New York's, something like that. New York's college team or something. I don't know. Don't you want, I know it's been so long, but don't you just want Syracuse to be good? It's like, they were good.
It's surprising how they haven't gotten like a Donovan McNabb-esque quarterback.
Yeah.
That could be that dynamic but they're a basketball school. But then here's the other thing. If you have Clemson or whatever school offering you all this stuff, what's Syracuse playing? But then the other take is you could be the man up at Syracuse, and
right, there's no pro team
run
there,
stuff.
Right? Yeah,
and you're playing in a dome. It's not like you're playing outside. So yeah, exactly. It's a great question. You'd think that, or I don't know why they haven't been able to get a Donovan McNabb, or at least go to a big bowl game or start something. They really haven't. They just kind of.
They've petered out a lot.
Hovering around 500, going to a pinstripe bowl here or there, but nothing too crazy.
Number 8, Washington comes into High Point Solutions Stadium in Piscataway, where I hear the ticket prices are soaring. Very hard to get into this place without bringing in the big bucks. I don't know much, and I feel like I haven't been burned by not watching a lot of Rutgers. They got destroyed last year. That was in Washington. Do we have any hope under Chris Ash's second year with the, or as they've said, from the ashes in his second year with the Rutgers Scarlet Knights?
Yeah, I think you have hope in that you have offensive coordinator Jerry Kill that's going to be running the offense for Rutgers. But I think I have nothing to say about them in that. Yeah, you're playing a great team in Washington that's coming, and you scheduled that. Good foresight, for making that call, But Washington's no joke. I mean, they might put a serious licking on Rutgers, but it's the first game of the year. Both teams might be pumped, might have some nerves. But I just think Chris Peterson's just going to go in there and win because that's what he does. And I don't even really think it'll be a ball game.
Well, they're in the New York market, as they say, even though it's not quite, even though Rutgers will put the Empire State Building in the background. We're not really that. We're probably closer to Philadelphia. But, it's the New York market. It's going to be on FS1. They have their quarterback back, Jake Browning, as a junior. They still have Myles Gaskin. And they were humbled a bit in their game against Alabama in the college football playoff. I think they are going to be ready to try to start this season off with a bang. And there's no better competitor than Rutgers over the years to do that. Colorado State, Colorado, right out of the gates, right? Friday, September 1st.
Yep. It's always a good game if you're in the Mile High State. I think Colorado, though, it's all going to depend. That game is obviously a rivalry game, but how is Colorado State going to prepare for, Colorado, the Buffaloes have just gotten better over the last 2 years. I think they're getting better players, but anything can happen in a rivalry game. And this game is being played we're at Sports Authority Field. Yeah. So it's always a fun environment. But I like the Buffaloes to, you know what? I'm not going to even say anything yet because I really want to see Colorado State play their opening game against Oregon State because who knows? I mean, they could really, it's just too early to tell. I just think it's going to be a good game for sure.
The next one is number 9 on ESPN, Wisconsin, and number 12 in Sports Illustrated, Wisconsin. There's just something not that exciting about Wisconsin. It was interesting when they beat LSU in Lambeau Field last year, but they're sort of the type of team, they're really good like as cattle. They got the line players and stuff like that, but for me, I just want to see I want to see electric players. Like I come to take for granted the guys in the middle, even though you shouldn't, because that's like the point of football. That's like 90% of the players. I just like the electric guys out wide, the quarterback, the running back, and I just feel like you don't see a lot of that with Wisconsin. I know they had Melvin Gordon, but it's been a couple years since that. They've just kind of gone back to being like a cattle team.
Yeah, it's not. I hate to agree with you, but. Not hate to agree with you, but they're not. They're just like a good, solid football team. Every year, Wisconsin's going to produce. They're just almost like bland, and I take them for granted. You know what I mean? But Wisconsin, they're not sexy at all. So maybe that's why they just don't attract anything. But that's how they run things up in Madison, and I don't know. I mean, maybe play spoiler, but. Nothing too crazy from Wisconsin. I mean, they're in the Big Ten. They might not even be ranked come the 5th or 6th week, with the 2 losses or whatever. So that's such a tough conference. But let's see if they can back it up. That's a high ranking, I think.
All right, next we got Clemson, number 5. They obviously lost their leader in Deshaun Watson, but with how they're able to recruit down there, kind of the system they've built, it's sort of a fun-loving Saban type of program. They're building it just as well and with just as much foundation to it. But I think they're just going to be fine, as evidenced by being number 5 here and number 7 in Sports Illustrated.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to. Well, I'm not going to go to the game against Auburn on September 9th. I was offered to go to that football game down at Clemson, but. To your point about the Alabama Saban-like program, I think Clemson might even do it better because they're smaller and in terms of a university, but I think their fans are just as passionate, if not more, than the Alabama fan. And I don't know. Once again, I probably can't equate that, but it's just the Dabo's got it going on down there. It's no joke. It's really a tremendous atmosphere, and if you ever get a chance to go down there, go do it. But I think Clemson will be fine in the ACC.
Penn State's going to be potentially pretty fun. They could still lose some games because they're in such a tough conference, but they got the quarterback, Trace McSorley. The last time we saw them, they were in a shootout, a fantastic game with USC in the Rose Bowl. They have a very highly ranked, draftable draftable running back. Saquon Barkley, right?
I was going to say Matt Barkley. Yeah. No, he's the real deal. And here's my deal. Last year at the Rose Bowl, they grew the grass longer. They didn't grow the grass longer, but Penn State, Rose Bowl, those fields are not they're not conducive like to the track athlete. They'll grow the grass a little bit longer, and Barkley's pretty damn good on long grass, and when he plays on regular turf or shorter grass, he's that much better and that much more dynamic. I mean, I just don't know if Penn State is going to be. Are they going to be pissed off that they lost to the Rose Bowl? Because they're going to have a number on their back too. Because I don't know, some of the teams in the conference probably thought that they shouldn't have gotten in because of how they dealt with that tiebreaker. I don't know. I think a lot of people are going to be coming at Penn State, so they're going to be marked. So they're going to get everybody's best effort for sure.
We talked Texas already. I do want to make a note on. We obviously have Lovie Smith in Illinois, but Wyoming has a top quarterback.
I was just about to say Josh Allen. That's so funny. That's so funny that you just mentioned that, because this guy, he's so good in terms of just raw strength, he's just. Did you watch him play at all last year? I mean, he was so much fun.
No, I didn't get a chance. I will watch, because they're saying, isn't it the same coach who coached Carson Wentz at North Dakota State? It's either his QB, something like, or is it the head coach? I forget, but
Craig Bohl, yeah, and it's funny because last year, and it was fun. You read so much that you don't know whether until you see it, then you can make your own opinion. But you're in the. I guess I'm hearing this, I'm reading that, I'm watching this. I'm watching Wyoming last year. It was like a Thursday night or it was Friday night. I forget what it was, but it was October, and this guy's throwing the ball across the field, and I'm like, what the heck? It's not like I just never saw anything like it. He's a physical specimen in that he's a big kid. He's 6'5", he's 230. He's quick for a guy being that tall, and for playing for Wyoming, it was just kind of fun to watch how he was able to just throw the football. It was just a lot of fun to watch.
Miami's at number 18. They'll be playing Bethune-Cookman. That's where Mark Richt.
Yeah,
went,
what do you
right?
think of? Yeah, what do you think of Mark Richt? I mean, I think this is his second year there. They went to a bowl. I think he's going to get players because he's a Miami grad. I think that's a good fit for him. Year two, I'm excited to see if Miami makes any noise in the ACC. Whether it's upsetting Florida State or upsetting Clemson or giving Louisville a game. I just think they're a team to watch in the ACC.
Yeah, good to have more competition. The next up is Youngstown State at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's interesting because they got the old USC quarterback there. Transfer.
Yeah, Max Brown just named the start, and Youngstown State, they got Bo Pelini over there, and it's funny. He just that's where he went. Him and Tressel are over there for the Penguins at Youngstown, and Pitt's so weird, similar to the Utah offensive coordinator situation. It's just Pitt has been going athletic director to coach. They've just been on that merry-go-round. They had nothing really stable up in Pittsburgh. But Max Brown's pretty good, and he's looking to go to the next level. This will be perfect for him because he's the starter and he'll get all the opportunity to showcase what he has for the Panthers. But Pittsburgh doesn't do anything for me this year.
Yeah, it might be interesting to watch the quarterback, but I mean, if he flamed out and then Darnold took over in USC, I'm sure he's not going to do much here. Next up, ranked players we got here are Oklahoma, and then we got Michigan playing Florida. So we got number 7 Oklahoma, number 11 Michigan, number 17 Florida. First of all, the Florida-Michigan game, I know they're well coached, they'll play well. But I just worry about teams, especially Michigan, like when you don't have a quarterback, that's such a problem.
What do you mean?
I just feel like you can win only so much if you just don't have a dynamic quarterback.
So you don't subscribe to Harbaugh having a good quarterback, or you just don't like what they have?
Well, it's spite, right? It's spate.
Yeah, I mean, it's not your, I guess, top tier recruit, but
I'd like him to get one too. Maybe it'll take some time, but that always worries me. I mean, they'll play fine, they'll be good.
But Florida's defense might eat them alive. Florida's defense is pretty damn good, and the Gators are going to be a force in the SEC East.
And then what do we think about Oklahoma, who's only playing UTEP, but it's just same old Oklahoma. Stoops is gone, which is interesting. That seemed like an early...
That was weird. I was waiting for the scandal to drop, and no, I guess that's how they're going to do it at Oklahoma. They're very in-house. They're very close-knit. I kind of like that about them. They've been grooming Lincoln Riley for the head coaching position, and I think he'll do fine. I think Bradford he's the key. I mean, if he can live up to what people talk about week in and week out and not get injured and just staying healthy, I think I don't know, because I think sometimes that Bradford plays a little too off the cuff. Like, dude, you're not like a 20-year vet in the NFL or a 10-year vet. It's like, yeah, you got an arm and you're dynamic, but sometimes I think that gets him in trouble.
You get too enterprising. You want someone who just throw the ball away if there's not a play to be made.
And might be a weird comparison, but similar to Pat Mahomes from Texas Tech last few years. Mahomes was like a guy who could throw the ball all over the place, but then he would just take a few risks that were just really dumb. And this is Oklahoma. This isn't Texas Tech. I think there's more responsibility being the quarterback at Oklahoma, and I think some of those decisions, you expect more from an Oklahoma quarterback because that's why you're the Oklahoma quarterback. It's similar to if you were Notre Dame or USC or Alabama quarterback. But
so we have a few other games, although we have talked about some of the teams here. I mean, we definitely have talked about in passing a lot of the teams. I only have a couple minutes, so the only couple notes I want to do before I leave you off to your glory, which I'll let you. Sunday, September 3rd, we have UCLA. As much as Sam Darnold has overachieved, there's some level of Josh Rosen that has been kind of the anti-Darnold. And he is slated in mock drafts to be number 3 quarterback, with Darnold being number 1, and potentially going to the Jets, which is perfect for the Jets, right? But why don't you talk as we kind of close this out, because we have a little bit of a limited time. Tell me about USC, who's ascended the ranks under the mythological Sam Darnold.
It's incredible. It's really, if you're a Trojan fan, it's I tell you what, leaving last year's 52-6 loss against Alabama, walking out of Cowboy Stadium, seriously considering is USC going to win 4 games this year? They look that bad. Not to say that Alabama is it was just USC looked so bad. They started out 1-3, and then obviously with 9-game winning streak, they wound up winning the Rose Bowl in an incredible fashion, go 10-3. All right, so I kind of agree with what you just said. I think Rosen is a little bit more polished. He might be the more true pocket passer. Sam Darnold's more of a football player. He's more of a, not improviser. He can just, and it's such a small sample set that you can't even, I don't even know why they're putting this much stock into Darnold, because now teams kind of have the book on him, but he can improvise. He can scramble around the pocket a little bit better than what Rosen can do. But I don't know. I think also Darnold's got more talent around him than Rosen does at UCLA. I think Rosen's got a better overall just program around him. That's not taking anything away from Darnold. I'm just being, I'm just trying to look at all sides here. But USC is primed for a solid 2017 campaign. And a lot of people, and that's what worries me, is that if you're going to kind of hype them so much, and it's like, well, you better produce. And I just don't think I see like a 52-6 loss like last year in this year's team. I think they've learned from it. They also have a better coaching staff that's been there for a few years, and they've got talent, and they got to start out against Western Michigan, which is not going to be an easy game. And then obviously play Texas, 2 non-conference games that are going to be tough to begin with. But the good thing for USC is that they don't have to worry about. They have a relatively light Pac-12 schedule this year, and I think Washington State, that game up in Pullman might give them some fits. But if you're a Trojans fan, this is what this season is. This should be a title run. And I'm really excited. I'll be going out to Berkeley on the 23rd to see them play Cal over at up in Berkeley. And I don't know. I haven't been this excited for a Trojans team in about 10 years. It's kind of strange. It's kind of embarrassing to admit that, but very, very excited.
Well, it's going to be perfect because you're going 5:15 start. I mean, that's on Pac-12. I don't know if I have that network or not. 5:15 start right into the 8 p.m. Alabama, Florida State, which you cannot ask, at least initially, for a better opening week game. I mean, that's as good as it gets and good for those teams playing. And I think if you're going to do it in week 1 because you have plenty of time to come back from a loss.
It's so awesome. It's to get those teams and coaches to do that. I think that wouldn't have happened if you didn't have the college football playoff. Bottom line, and I know that's an obvious statement, but yeah, I'm excited. I think the new Georgia Dome, that's a Saturday, right? So you'll be able to get Chick-fil-A, and it's going to be a shootout. I mean, nosebleeds. I have a friend of mine who was going to go to the game and tailgate because she's an Alabama alum, and she can't even get nosebleeds for that game under like 380 or something or 400. So I mean, it's going to be quite the scene down in A-Town.
Sweet. Well, why don't we call it there because of me? But I think we got a nice little kickoff to the college football season coming, and we've done it here. And we now have a reprieve for next week. We can pick this discussion back up potentially weekly, 2 weeks from now. Matt, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me on.